The accident had rattled the community. While accidents weren't uncommon in Greenwood, this one stood out due to the sheer senselessness of it. 2 young lives were drastically affected, one tragically lost. It had happened a week ago, and yet, no one could predict how things would ultimately unfold. It was Sunday afternoon, June 28th, normally a quiet time in Greenwood, a semi-rural town of about 7,000 residents just outside Phoenix, Arizona. State Route 31, the main road through town, usually saw little traffic on Sunday afternoons. The few cars that drove through were often locals heading to the general store or teenagers on their way to visit friends. It was this latter activity that led to the tragic events that would disturb the peace of the community on that particular day. In the days that followed, however, the bizarre circumstances surrounding the incident would unfold in ways no one could have imagined. Grace Matthews wasn't one to defy her mother. She had been told repeatedly not to ride her bike on the main road. After Mass at St. Mary's Church, Grace asked her mother if she could ride to visit her friend Debbie after dinner. Grace assured her mother that they would work on a school project tomorrow and that she would take the safest route, through the school's field and down Debbie Street, avoiding the main road. Her mother, Claire Matthews, agreed but reminded her to be cautious and to return by 3 p.m., as she had a First Communion class to attend that afternoon. Grace promised she would be home on time, not wanting to risk being late for Sister Angelica's class. Sister Angelica was both her 4th grade teacher and her catechism instructor. Being late would lead to trouble. Gary Harris was on top of the world. He had just graduated from Greenwood High School and received confirmation of his acceptance into Arizona State University with a 4-year hockey scholarship. To celebrate, his father had given him a brand new Ford Mustang. It was good to have a wealthy father. Dr. Lionel Harris, chief of neurological surgery at GSU School of Medicine, was about to make a decision that would have far-reaching consequences, both for him and for his son. The Sunday afternoon was warm and sunny, typical for early summer. The field behind the school was bustling with activity. Grace spent some time talking with her school friends before getting on her bike and riding down the gentle slope toward the street. Unknown to her, the town had started digging up the road at the bottom of the hill that week to install new sewer pipes. The grading of the road had left the surface soft and uneven. As Grace's bike reached the bottom of the slope and began to turn onto the street, the wheels got stuck. She was thrown off the bike and into the road, unaware of the car approaching at that very moment. Gary was bored that afternoon. His father was working the Sunday shift at the hospital, and his mother was likely out at some social event. He decided to take his new car to the school and show it off to his friends, who were supposed to be playing a baseball game. As he turned onto School St. from First Street, he saw a couple of friends on the corner. They waved and gave him the thumbs up. Gary glanced at them, and in that moment, he missed seeing the girl on the bike coming down the hill. By the time he looked back at the road, all he saw was Grace emerging from behind the shrubs. Gary jerked the steering wheel to the left, but it was too late. The Mustang collided with the girl. The car then veered across the road and crashed into a tree. Gary was unaware of the tree or the steering wheel slamming into his chest. Dr. Harris, a well-respected but somewhat controversial figure in neurological surgery, was working his shift at the hospital. Though he had published numerous papers on brain transplants as potential life-saving techniques, he had never been allowed to attempt the procedure on humans. His research clinic at GSU was fully equipped for cutting-edge experiments, but the approval for human trials had never come. Little did he know, miles away, his son and a young girl were about to provide him the opportunity he had been waiting for. The call to the hospital came in from the ambulance crew, reporting that they were transporting 2 victims. Both were in critical condition, a young male with severe chest trauma and a young female with serious head injuries. CPR was ongoing for the female, and the male was exhibiting erratic heartbeats and low blood pressure. The hospital immediately went on high alert. Dr. Harris was called to the emergency room to assess the head injuries. The girl was brought into the emergency room first, and the young man was placed in another. Dr. Harris was directed to the room with the female patient due to the severity of the head injuries. At this point, he had no idea that his own son was in the next room. Upon examining the girl, Dr. Harris found no injuries other than a large bruise on her left temple and some cuts on her arms and legs. However, her vital signs were unstable. Dr. Harris quickly ordered a CT scan and EEG. It soon became clear that the young girl was brain dead, though she was being kept alive on life support. Dr. Stanhope, the attending physician, was informed of the male patient's identity. He immediately instructed the emergency room staff not to reveal to Dr. Harris that the other patient was his son. Dr. Stanhope took it upon himself to handle the situation after Dr. Harris had finished with the girl, fearing that Dr. Harris might become emotionally overwhelmed. This decision proved to be wise. When Dr. Stanhope eventually informed Dr. Harris of his son's condition and that it was Gary who had struck the girl with his car, Lionel Harris collapsed and had to be admitted to the hospital for observation overnight. The next morning, at 8 a.m., Dr. Harris was released with instructions to go home and rest. He was assured that he would be informed of any updates regarding the patients. Meanwhile, both youths were placed in intensive care. Grace's mother was also being kept at the hospital, as she had taken the news of her daughter's injuries very hard and was sedated on Monday morning. For the following 3 days, the community held vigils for both victims. St. Mary's Church hosted a candlelight vigil each evening at 6 p.m., and members of Gary's Church, Greenwood Congregational, held a prayer service. The community expressed its grief and frustration over the tragic situation. On Tuesday morning, both patients were transferred to GSU School of Medicine's neurological clinic, where the facilities were better suited to treat their injuries. It was reported that Gary was experiencing some neurological issues, while Grace showed no signs of brain activity. Dr. Harris had made a decision. He knew Grace was effectively dead, though he hadn't yet informed her mother. He also realized that Gary would likely not survive due to the irreversible damage to his heart and lungs. Dr. Harris had altered the medical records to show neurological damage in Gary to justify transferring both patients to his clinic. His plan was to save one of them, if possible, and to prove his theories on brain transplantation. Unbeknownst to him, Dr. Harris was also struggling with his own instability. He had become convinced that saving even one life was better than saving none. Though the surgery would be difficult to perform alone, he had the necessary equipment and deemed the risk of others knowing what he planned to do too high. He began the surgery early on Wednesday morning. By Thursday afternoon, the autopsy had been completed. The medical examiner, who had been called to the clinic after Gary's death, reviewed the data provided by Dr. Harris and decided to conduct the autopsy there. He confirmed that Gary's death was due to complications from the automobile accident, severe lacerations to the heart and lungs, complicated by swelling of the brain. The medical examiner asked Dr. Harris why he had removed Gary's brain. Dr. Harris explained that while it wasn't strictly necessary, he needed the data for his research, and since it was his son's brain, he had given himself permission. The medical examiner was taken aback but didn't consider it illegal, given Dr. Harris's previous success in reviving some brain activity in the girl when others had believed she was brain dead. He rationalized that Dr. Harris's work, though unconventional, was potentially groundbreaking. Thus, the first chapter of Gary Harris's life came to an end. A week after the accident, the Greenwood Police Department released a statement clearing Gary Harris of any responsibility for Grace Matthews' injuries. The incident was deemed the result of unfortunate circumstances, and no charges would be filed against him. Gary found himself staring at a distant light, its intensity unwavering. "No matter how fast I run, I can't catch it," he thought. Then, the light vanished. On a sunny Saturday morning in early September, Claire received a call from Dr. Harris's office. Initially, she feared something had gone wrong with Grace's condition. Dr. Harris answered as soon as she called back. "Good morning, Mrs. Matthews. Thank you for returning my call so promptly," he said. Claire immediately asked, "Is something wrong?" Dr. Harris reassured her, "Not at all. I believe Grace may briefly wake up today, and I just wanted to prepare you for that." Claire asked, "Can I see her? Should I come over now?" Dr. Harris replied, "Not just yet. This first time may be disorienting for her. I'll let you know when you can visit." He added, "The good news is that she's improving." "Thank you, doctor." "You've been wonderful," Claire responded. After hanging up, Claire sank onto the sofa, overwhelmed by a wave of joy and relief. Her prayers to the Blessed Virgin had not gone unanswered. Once again, Gary saw the light. This time, it was closer, approaching rapidly. He felt a rush of wind. Then, the light disappeared once more. 3 weeks later, Gary regained consciousness. The room was familiar, filled with medical equipment and large windows that allowed natural light to pour in. It took him a moment to realize where he was, his father's clinic. He noticed a small, bandaged figure lying on a nearby bed, seemingly staring back at him. He tried to sit up but couldn't feel anything. Moving his head was difficult. He couldn't remember how he ended up here, but the crash started to come back to him. Dr. Harris entered the room. His father looked worn out, walking with a slight stoop. As soon as Dr. Harris saw Gary staring at his reflection in the ceiling mirror, he sat beside him, preparing to speak the truth. "Gary," he said, "we need to talk." Later, as Lionel Harris sat in his car, reflecting on the conversation with his son, he knew that would be the last time he'd speak to Gary for a long while. He understood that Gary would soon be handed over to Claire Matthews, and Gary would have to start life anew as her daughter. The realization hit Lionel hard, the girl's eyes were heartbreaking, and Gary couldn't yet voice the turmoil in his mind. Lionel knew his son would need significant help navigating this transition, but he could no longer provide it. After his conversation with Gary, Lionel wrote a letter to his close friend, Dr. Ken Mitchell, explaining everything. He asked Ken to take over Gary's case and trusted him to make the right decisions. In the letter, Lionel also explained that he was resigning from the university and leaving Greenwood. He had appointed Ken as the guardian of a trust fund for Grace Matthews, ensuring she would have everything she needed to live the life that Gary would never get to experience. When Dr. Mitchell received Lionel's letter, he immediately attempted to reach his friend but was unsuccessful. He informed his nurse, Susan, that he would be away for several days and headed straight to see Grace. Claire had been informed that Dr. Harris was transferring Grace's care to Dr. Mitchell, as he needed to leave for a while. Dr. Harris assured her that Dr. Mitchell was highly skilled, both as a neurosurgeon and a child psychiatrist, and that Grace would receive the best care, free of charge. Claire was told that Grace had regained consciousness briefly, which was a positive sign, and that the EEG scans showed improvement. Claire visited Grace frequently, staying late into the night, but each time, she saw no sign of her daughter regaining consciousness. Claire cried often, consumed by the pain of seeing her child in such a state. She would do anything to bring her back. During one visit, however, Claire felt a slight squeeze of her hand from Grace. This gave her hope. Dr. Mitchell eventually visited Claire to introduce himself and handed her the letter from Dr. Harris, officially transferring Grace's care to him. Claire was relieved and gladly accepted Dr. Mitchell's assistance. "I'll need some time alone with Grace for a few days," Dr. Mitchell explained. "I'll evaluate her without distractions, and after that, I'd like you to come to the clinic and spend the day with her. I'll observe from another room through a video camera. This will help me better assess her condition." Claire asked, "Doctor, what do you think are Grace's chances for a full recovery?" Dr. Mitchell responded, "Considering her progress so far, I'd say very good. But I must caution you, she's had severe brain trauma. Over the next few months, she may act in ways that are completely uncharacteristic of her, and she could even experience memory loss. This is common in cases like hers. Patience, understanding, and support will be essential, not only from you but from everyone who visits her. I would also ask that you refrain from criticizing her and ensure that all visitors are briefed on this. It will help her healing process." Claire felt relieved after speaking with Dr. Mitchell and promised to follow his guidance closely. She knew the coming months would test her patience, but she was determined to help Grace recover. After Dr. Mitchell left, Claire decided to speak with Father Clements. She called St. Mary's Parish House to arrange the conversation. Meanwhile, Dr. Mitchell had been observing his new patient for a while, contemplating the best approach to help Gary, now living as Grace, accept her new life as a girl. He knew this was uncharted territory, and the implications were unprecedented. He decided to proceed with a straightforward method, using as little medication as possible. Mild tranquilizers would suffice initially, but patience and understanding would be key. Gary would need to be willing to cooperate for the plan to work. The conversation he was about to have with her was crucial. If he messed it up, it could lead to mental instability or worse. Little did Dr. Mitchell know, Lionel Harris had already spoken to Gary. Gary had been dreaming he was late for hockey practice. As he rushed out of the field house and onto the field, everything froze. The coach came up to him and asked, "What are you doing here?" "Practice," Gary replied. "Not your time," the coach responded. "Girls' field hockey is tomorrow." Gary glanced at his reflection in the glass doors. He saw a pretty girl with long brown hair, dressed in a girls' field hockey uniform. The dream faded, and once again, Gary saw the light. He woke up. Gary looked around the room. At first, nothing registered. He saw a man sitting in a chair next to his bed, but his gaze quickly drifted past him, scanning the room. He noticed stuffed animals and flowers, greeting cards stuck everywhere. Confused, he wondered who else was in the room, though he couldn't turn his head to see the other bed. He turned back to the man and weakly said, "Hello." But the voice was unmistakably Grace's, soft, yet unmistakably hers. Gary heard the little girl's voice at the same time as his own, and he remembered his father's confession. Silent anguish crossed Gary's face. Dr. Mitchell considered giving Grace a tranquilizer right then, thinking she might be in pain. But as he heard her speak, he hesitated. "Dad, you bastard. What have you done to me?" Dr. Mitchell stared at the girl, surprised. "You know?" he asked. "Yes," Gary replied. Dr. Mitchell, after reviewing the charts, felt it was time to remove the bandages from the child's head and examine the surgical area. He recalled having done so 2 days ago, with no complications at that time. Lionel had given Grace anti-rejection drugs, noting that the two patients shared the same blood type and had a close tissue match, something that would reduce the risk of Grace's body rejecting the transplant. "Gary," said Dr. Mitchell, "I'm going to examine you and remove the bandages. You should see the results of your father's work. After this, I'll let you decide where we go from here. I promise you, if you decide not to continue with this, I can give you a drug that will allow you to die peacefully, without suffering. What I can't do is give you your old body back." As far as the world is concerned, Gary Harris is gone, and Grace Matthews survived. Gary, trying to summon courage despite his overwhelming fear, replied, "I don't have much of a choice. I either live as a girl now or die. Let's see what my old man did." Dr. Mitchell responded, "Okay, Gary. Let's take a look." He gently pulled the covers down and began to cut away the bandages with scissors. Once the bandages were removed, Dr. Mitchell inspected the incision site. It looked healthy, there were no signs of infection, and the healing process was progressing well. He checked Gary's eyes, noting a good pupil reaction to light. "Does everything look clear?" Dr. Mitchell asked. Gary answered, "Yes, everything looks fine." "Let's see if you can sit up," the doctor suggested. Dr. Mitchell gently took the child's hands and helped her sit up slowly. It was a positive sign, as the girl managed most of the movement on her own. She sat on the edge of the bed, and Dr. Mitchell instructed her to hold onto the rails for support. As he removed her gown, he couldn't help but think, what a beautiful child. He understood why Dr. Harris had gone to such lengths to save her. He wondered if Gary, now living as Grace, could come to realize that perhaps his father had given him a remarkable gift. Dr. Mitchell continued his examination. The reflexes were returning, and aside from a few bed sores, everything appeared to be progressing well. Gary observed the procedure with intense interest through the ceiling mirror. It was the first time he had seen a young girl's unclothed body up close. It looked delicate, but this girl was strikingly beautiful, even without hair. Gary decided to give this new life and body a chance. He knew he owed Grace a great debt, but whether he could repay it by making this work was uncertain. "Doctor, I'm not a quitter. If I have to live as a little girl now, so be it," Gary said, summoning courage. Dr. Mitchell smiled. "Good choice, Gary. Life is always the better option. But understand, you'll face many challenges ahead. You'll need to learn how to be a 10-year-old again, how to be a girl, and, most importantly, how to love a new mother." Gary nodded. "All of that's better than being dead, isn't it?" "Yes," Dr. Mitchell replied. "Let's start by calling you Grace from now on. You'll have to get used to that name. And by the way, your mother, Claire Matthews, will be coming to see you the day after tomorrow." Dr. Mitchell noticed Grace's heart rate suddenly increase. Gary stared at the girl in the mirror for a long time, anxiety settling in. He worried that he wouldn't be able to convince anyone, especially his mother, that he was really Grace. He knew nothing about being a girl, let alone a 10-year-old one. Dr. Mitchell entered the room again, carrying some clothes. "Let's get you looking like a girl," he said. He placed a pink and white nightgown along with a matching bathrobe on the bed. With a sense of embarrassment, Gary let Dr. Mitchell help him into the nightgown. As the fabric was pulled over his head, Gary cursed his father under his breath. He felt helpless in this strange situation that he hadn't asked for, and now he had to face the rest of his life in it. This is never going to work. Maybe dying would have been better, Gary thought. Dr. Mitchell left the room, and Gary was left alone. He looked at the girl in the mirror, sitting by the window in the wheelchair. "God, I am pretty," thought Gary. "Damn it, I am going to make this work." With that, he fell asleep and dreamed. 3 days later, Gary awoke to sunlight streaming into the room. He felt much better. As he looked around, he realized he was no longer in the hospital room filled with medical equipment. Instead, he was in a normal bedroom, decorated with pink and yellow curtains. The floor was covered in soft pink carpet, and in one corner stood a white vanity with a large mirror. A pink and gold chest of drawers was positioned by the wall. The bed was a white canopy, with fluffy bed coverings matching the rest of the room's decor. The child's tea table, along with the stuffed animals, had also been moved from the hospital room and arranged around the table. It was clear now, Gary was in a bedroom designed for a little girl. It was a much more pleasant setting, but he couldn't understand how he had ended up here. Dr. Mitchell entered the room with a smile. "Hi, Grace. I hope you like your new room. I had you moved here last night while you were asleep so you wouldn't be under too much stress." Grace looked at the doctor for a moment and then asked, "Am I still in the hospital?" "No," Dr. Mitchell replied. "You're now in your new room, which your mother, Mrs. Matthews, prepared for your homecoming. You're home now with her. She'll be in to see you shortly. But first, I'd like to talk to you, if you're up for it." "How's this, doctor?" Gary asked. "Oh, doctor, I'm so happy. Is Mommy really here now?" Gary said, attempting to sound as joyful as possible. Dr. Mitchell looked at his patient for a moment, assessing. "That's good, Gary. Keep it up. It's a good start." He then asked, "Who is Gary?" The little girl's response came easily. "Good, let's work with that assumption. You need to start thinking of yourself as Grace. You really are her now, you know," said Dr. Mitchell. "Tell me about it, doctor. Look at me. Could I not know who and what I am now? I'm going to make this work, though. I don't have much of a choice, do I?" Dr. Mitchell helped Grace sit up and move into a chair by the window. He believed getting her out of bed and moving around would help with her progress. "There. Is that better, Grace?" "Yes. Thank you, doctor. Much better. Grace, you've been doing so well that I'm only going to visit every couple of days. My nurse will come by daily to change your bandages, but I think you're doing great. I'd like you to try getting up and dress tomorrow, even if it's just for a little while. How does that sound? Oh, thank you, doctor. Do you really think I can get up for a while? Yes, young lady, I do. You need some exercise, and your mother has been instructed on what to do. All right, doctor. I promise to do everything you say. I really want to get better. Dr. Mitchell was impressed by the child's response. If he hadn't known better, he would have sworn he was speaking to the real Grace Matthews. He shook his head in disbelief. All right, he said, I'm going to send your mother in now. Are you sure you're ready for this? Oh yes, doctor. Please, send her in, Gary replied. Although Gary was nervous, he knew it was time to meet his new mother, and the sooner it happened, the better. Claire Matthews entered the room and immediately went to Grace. She reached out and embraced her gently, planting a kiss on her cheek. Tears streamed down her face. Grace, dear Grace, you had me so worried. Everything will be all right now. Mommy, I was so scared. I know, darling. I was scared too. Dr. Mitchell says you're getting much better now. Dr. Mitchell says I can get dressed tomorrow and get up for a while. Yes, dear. And I have a nice surprise for you too. Oh, that's wonderful, Mommy. Can you tell me what it is? Why don't you wait and see? Right now, I just want to look at you and hold you. The little girl and her mother held each other for a long time, neither wanting to break the moment. The sunlight streamed through the window, casting a path across the floor that slowly crept up to the bed. The first rays landed on Grace's small face, an angel asleep. Gary stirred in response to the light. He felt a sudden urge to go to the bathroom. Swinging his legs out of the bed, he immediately realized how far the floor was from his feet. Looking down, it hit him, he was much smaller now. He held onto the bedpost, trying to steady himself. His legs felt weak, and he noticed the door to the hallway. Gary entered the bathroom and instinctively reached for his male organ, but his hand brushed against the soft material of his nightgown. Laughing softly to himself, he muttered, "Silly, I have to remember to sit down now to pee." Lifting the hem of his nightgown, he sat down on the toilet. The experience was strange, as his urine seemed to spray out quickly, rather than flow in a steady stream. After finishing, he realized that now he had to wipe himself, his first act as a girl on his own. It felt odd, and he wondered how many other things would be different now. Just as Gary stood up to flush, Claire rushed into the bathroom. "Grace, what are you doing? Why didn't you call me? You could have hurt yourself." "I'm all right, Mother. I had to go pee, and I didn't want to wake you." "Oh, honey, don't worry about that. I'll always come when you need help." Claire saw the huge smile on Grace's face. She knew her daughter had just overcome a major hurdle, she was walking on her own. "You're walking, dear." "Yes, Mother." "Isn't it great?" Grace replied. Grace reached out and wrapped her arms around Claire's neck. They hugged each other tightly. Gary thought to himself, "Nice going, kid." Claire helped Grace out of the tub after giving her a sponge bath. As she helped Grace sit in the water, Gary couldn't help but examine his new body closely. He couldn't believe how different he looked and felt. There was a sense of embarrassment, but also an odd enjoyment in having a woman help him. Claire was ecstatic. She had her daughter back, and she was determined to never let anything harm her little girl again. From this point forward, she would pamper Grace, ensuring she became the epitome of a perfect, feminine child. After finishing the bath, Claire wrapped a towel around Grace and gently asked, "How do you feel now, sweetie?" "Wonderful, Mother. I feel so nice and clean now. It's been a long time since I've felt this good." "That's great, dear. Let's get you dressed, and then I'll give you your surprise. I've got some lovely new clothes for you to wear. Claire helped Grace walk back to the bedroom. She sat Grace on the edge of the bed while she went into the closet to pick out a few items covered in white garment bags. She also brought out a large round box with a lid. Gary glanced at the clothes but couldn't see into the opaque bags. He felt a growing sense of nervousness. He knew he'd have to start wearing little girls' clothes now, but he hoped they would be simple and neutral, not too frilly or lacy. Claire opened the dresser drawer and laid a pink nylon set of panties and a camisole with delicate pink and white lace trim on the bed. She also laid out a pair of pink brocade pantyhose. Gary looked at the items, realizing that his hopes for neutral clothing were in vain. It was clear that his new mother was determined to make Grace as pretty and feminine as possible. Gary thought to himself, well, what did I expect? I'm a pretty little girl now. Claire turned to smile at her daughter. Let's get you dressed, she said. She held the waistband of the panties open, and Gary stepped into them. As the fabric slid up his small legs and over his bottom, he was acutely aware of how nice they felt. After he put on the camisole and the pantyhose, Gary looked at himself in the dresser mirror. The image of the little bald girl in pink underwear stared back at him. He suddenly became very aware of who he now was. Fear of the future washed over him, and he began to cry softly, as any little girl might. Claire immediately pulled him into her arms and hugged him. What's the matter, Grace? Do you need to lie down? Claire asked, concern in her voice. No, Mommy. I'm just scared. Don't worry, dear. I won't let anything happen to you again. I promise, Claire reassured her. After a few moments, Grace calmed down and sat on the bed as Claire removed the remaining items from the bags. Gary's mouth dropped open as he saw the pretty pink and white party dress and white bouffant slip Claire placed on the bed beside him. It was beautiful. Claire opened a round box and pulled out an exquisite long brown wig. These are your surprises, dear. No more bald head for you. Dr. Mitchell said you can wear a wig now until your hair grows out, with no risk of infection, Claire explained. Gary had to admit that if he had to dress as a little girl, these items were the best he could hope for. They were beautiful. Soon, Claire had Grace all dressed and placed the wig on her head. The long brown hair fell straight down her back, nearly to her waist. Claire applied a little blush to Grace's face, gently blending it in. There, dear. All done, Claire said with satisfaction. When Gary looked in the mirror this time, he was shocked. The image of the prettiest little girl he'd ever seen stared back at him. She was an angel. Gary almost swooned, realizing that he had now become her. The little girl hugged her mother, and from that moment, a new life began. For the first few days, Gary felt awkward, but he soon found it becoming easier. His biggest challenge was trying to act like a little girl instead of a 19-year-old man. It was nice not being confined to the bed any longer. Grace had now been home for over a month. She had met a few of her school friends, and there was no problem recognizing them or remembering her relationship with them. Her mental companion provided all the details she needed. Her meeting with Father Clements had gone very well, and she immediately liked the kind man. He had brought her a new prayer book and catechism as a gift, telling her that she had been given a special gift from God and should treasure it. Did he have some sixth sense about my real self? Grace wondered. She would have to ask Father Clements about that later. Today was Saturday, and her mother had promised to take her to the mall for some new clothes. It would be her first time outside the house since coming home from the hospital. Grace had been told that she would be fitted for her first communion dress. She was going to have her first communion in 2 weeks. Although Gary feared the trip outside as a girl, he knew it was something he needed to do. He had been cooped up inside for far too long. Dr. Mitchell had visited a couple of times to check up on Grace, and even he was amazed at how much she had adjusted. He was just astounded by how well Gary seemed to be accepting his new identity as Grace. Her physical condition was improving daily, and his main concern now was her mental adjustment to her new body. Dr. Mitchell told Mrs. Matthews that Grace could now take short trips out of the house whenever she liked. 2 weeks later, Grace stood in her room on Sunday morning while her mother made the final adjustments to her first communion outfit. Grace looked in the mirror as her mother placed the white veil on her head. Grace was overjoyed with what she saw and how she felt. It marked a wonderful end to her long journey of recovery and transformation. She said a silent prayer, then reached out and hugged her mother. "I love you so much," she whispered. Claire looked at her daughter, pulled her close, and with tears in her eyes, whispered in Grace's ear, "Thank you, dear. I love you so much too." I felt incredibly out of place. I was about to start a completely new life. Not only was I a child once more, but I was also now a girl. I had a new mother, a new home, and today I was about to embrace a new religion, standing in line with the other girls at the entrance to the church in my first communion dress. If I hadn't completely lost my mind by now, I figured I could probably handle whatever else life threw my way. As I knelt at the altar rail and received the host on my tongue for the first time, a strange feeling washed over me. I felt completely alone. I offered my prayer of thanksgiving and made the sign of the cross. Kneeling again in the pew beside my classmates, I said a prayer for Grace Matthews, thanking her for the gift she had given me. I had the sense that Grace could hear me. In that moment, I became Grace, completely. I turned my focus to my prayers and asked the Blessed Virgin to intercede on Grace's behalf. I prayed the Rosary. Over time, I truly became Grace. Completely. I came to love Claire Matthews, the woman who had given birth to this body, even if not my mind. I depended on her for everything, and in my heart, she became my mother. I returned to school, to Grace's 4th grade class, and began to enjoy the freedom of being a little kid again, even if I was now a girl. The whole experience, being a little girl, became exhilarating and fun. Now, at 16, I'm preparing for my junior prom at St. Mary's. My date, Jimmy Mulligan, is an absolute gentleman. He treats me like royalty, and I like him a lot. Even my mom approves of him. I hope to marry him one day. Thank you, Grace, from the bottom of my heart. You're welcome, Gary. I thought I heard from somewhere far away. If you appreciated this story and wish to show your support, don't forget to join me on Patreon for exclusive content.